Ask any 12-year-old girl if she's thought about her wedding. I promise you she has. Ask a 12-year-old boy, he might say yes too, but it's like, what are you going to have? Pizza and donuts. What are you, silly? But I bet you talk to a 12-year-old girl, she'll tell you the colors she's going to prefer. She's thought about her hair. She's thought about the dress. If she had to get married right now, who'd be in the wedding party? All the stuff. Why? Because weddings they're a huge deal. It's a sign of devotion, of care, of the promise of the future. And so in Matthew 22, when a king creates this massive wedding banquet for his son and a bunch of people don't show up, and he goes and invites anybody else from the highways and the byways, we see why there's an immediate problem. Let me read this to you. This is Matthew 22:9. And the king says, "Therefore, go into the highways, and as many as you find, invite them to the wedding." So those servants went out into the highways and gathered together all whom they found, both bad and good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. Beautiful picture. But when the king came in to see the guests, he saw a man there who didn't have on a wedding garment. So he said to him, "Friend, how did you come in here without a wedding garment?" And the man was speechless. Then the king said to the servants, "Bind him hand and foot, take him away, cast him into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, because many are called, but few are chosen." Weddings are a great time of anticipation, energy, all this stuff that just works up to this really wonderful culminating moment. It's beautiful. But what we see in the example of this man here is apathy. Apathy is a lack of concern or interest for something. Someone is apathetic if they don't show a care for or preparation for, things like that. And that's what happens here. And this parallels really what happens in the world between the opportunity of people who could follow after God and love him dearly, and people who just don't really care. People who are apathetic, they lack interest or they lack concern. And it's a disease that runs through all humankind. It's not a modern problem. It's a human problem. Teddy Roosevelt, he's a president around the turn of the 20th century. He was a great speaker. He was a very incredible man. And he has this quote, and this is what it says. It says, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better." You see, an apathetic person a lot of times has plenty of opinions, but doesn't have a lot of skin in the game. It goes on to say, "The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. The man who knows great enthusiasms, he knows great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly." Don't you understand that really there are some games that you don't get to play unless you're all in? When it comes to being a Christian, you don't get to carry the title of the Son of God or the sons of God in the earth, like lowercase s, unless you just sold out to it. It's a high honor. It's a wonderful privilege. And so in this speech that Teddy Roosevelt gives called "The Man in the Arena," he's talking exactly like that. He's saying there are just some things you don't get to be a part of unless you have a part of nothing else. And that's what we're called to. So then further on in Matthew 22, verse 37, when Jesus tells a man who asks him what the most important commandment is, and he says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind," he's saying exactly that. It's worth everything that you give. It's worth everything that you could possibly give. Now, some people prefer to give their mind because, they are just conservative. They're fundamentalists. And so Christianity kind of fits in with that. Some people just want to give their heart because they feel good about the message of God and they really want to believe in something after they die, perhaps. Other people are kind of able to just give of their soul in the sense because they hope for something that they can't really put their hands around. Their children are far off, or a spouse has gone awry, and so they kind of have this like shadow of the fullness, but they're not totally in. Now look, you and I are both in progress. Paul says we work out our salvation daily with fear and trembling. But I guess the point is this, is that When we own the opportunity to be Christians, we have to own it from the perspective of Jesus Christ. When Jesus Christ gave himself on the cross, he didn't give himself just as a blanket mass just for anybody necessarily. He did. For God so loved the world, he gave his only son, right? Everybody. But he sees this act of compassion on an individual basis. And so when you think about your devotion, do it fully for him. Don't do it for your mind's sake, for your family's sake. Don't do it for your philosophy of life. Do it because he's fully worthy. That's what it means in Romans 12 when it says, this is our reasonable service, that we love him with our heart, we love him with our soul, we love him with our mind. And so that's my challenge to you today. Remember that it's a great privilege to be invited to the feast, to be invited to the wedding. Let's show up in style. God bless you.